Hello, and welcome to a conversation with Russ Dobler. This video is part of my interview series with science communicators and skeptical activists for my Skeptical Inquirer online column. Today, my guest is Russ Dobler, who, among other things, is the president of the New York City Skeptics and the editor of the science section of AIPT.com. Welcome, Russ.
Thank you, Rob. It's good to be here. Thank you for asking me to do this. Two quick corrections because we do care about the truth here. You asked me and you still got it wrong. It's Dobler, not Dobler.
I
Not that I really
did.
care. And AIPT.com is actually some weird Chinese site who won't sell us the rights. So we are AIPTcomics.com.
Okay. Every time I write that, I do it wrong. And
we
AIPT
would love for it to be simple, but China, they're just screwing everybody.
AIPT Comics, no underscore anything in between when you Google
That's
it?
right. That's right.
That's right. Okay. So what is AIPTcomics.com, Russ?
Well, that's a great question. It started as a blog, mostly about comics. I'm probably early teens, something like that. Yeah, maybe even earlier than that, by two friends in Boston. I'm actually located in New York, as you know. I'm president of the New York City Skeptics. And they it kind of grew over time. They were reviewing comics, just talking about whatever pop culture stuff they were interested in. And eventually they started reviewing more and more comics, and the publisher started to take notice and said, hey, we'll send you early copies if you want to review these. And then people came in who wanted to do movie stuff. And at one point, somebody reached out to me because I had started a blog about science. I was a little upset with the quality of science journalism, and as you might expect, skeptical journalism too.
So this was your own personal blog?
Yeah. And I just happened to write one about superheroes, the science of super healing or something like that. And I had it in my signature on an old school comic book message board. And one of them saw me and said, hey, would you like to come write science stuff for us? And I said, sure, why not? I actually did have to think about it for a second because I was like, ugh, do I want to be pigeonholed as the comic book guy? It's like, I like comics, but like, I'd like to get more of a serious audience, And then I was like, you know what? These kind of like getting this stuff in front of people who aren't expecting it, that might be a pretty good tactic. So most of AIPT is still just comics and movies and stuff like that. And then, I got to know the guys pretty well. I used to live in Boston before, when they were much younger, probably too young to go to the bar with me. But I have been out there since and hung out with them, and they're great guys. So they give me my own little corner. They believe in what we do. They believe in skepticism, believe it or not, once I kind of told them what it was.
And that corner is AIPT Science, as you call it, right?
Yes. We all have like all the different kind of sections have their own like social media handles. So there's AIPT movies and I'm AIPT Science, which I figured was just a little more like you call it AIP. Well, first I did mostly science, and then I was like, oh, we could really move more into skepticism and still find good topics. But like nobody really knows what skepticism is. So I'm like, well, we'll call it science and get people to click on it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, part of, skepticism is science communication, part of it's critical thinking communication. So that makes sense. And as we have discussed before, and other people have, the word skeptic has gotten a bad rap because, like, hey, there are climate skeptics and Holocaust skeptics, and so the word doesn't only have one meaning, and that's a problem.
Especially lately, but that's probably another topic. But and if like when I started it, it was more of an issue of nobody knew what skepticism was, so they weren't going to click on it. And now it's more like, well, I don't want people to think I'm promoting conspiracy theories. So
right. Yeah, I've heard the problem of people actually being concerned about carrying around a Skeptical Inquirer article with Bigfoot on the cover, because it's debunking that or investigating why we don't think that's real. But still, it looks like, hey, you believe in Bigfoot, you're carrying that around.
You see, that's where I differ, because if you actually go to AIPTcomics.com right now and you click on the science drop-down menu, you're going to see something that says reality check, which you might be able to figure out what that is. It's science of movies and whatever else. But then The next three categories are UFOs, conspiracy theories, and cryptids. And despite what I said about not wanting people to think I'm promoting conspiracy theories, the average person is interested in that sort of thing. So
And
they click on the
probably
drop
believes it.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether they believe it or not, it might just be a fun thing to think about to them. So you click on that, and all of a sudden, there's all this skeptical material about conspiracy theories, and you might not even realize it's skeptical until you click on an article, and then I've got you.
Right. I've heard you use the word skepcom, I think, instead of SciComm. That's
Yeah, it's
interesting.
something I was kind of trying to play with. Didn't really. I haven't like brought it to the greater community yet to say, hey, this is something we should get behind. But I think we have a after the climate deniers really came out at the beginning of the 21st century or around then, I think scientists really figured out that like a lot of scientists were very hesitant to do science communication for a long time. Carl Sagan got excoriated because people would say like, why are you doing this? Who cares what the public thinks? Just do your work. But then when you had climate deniers, anti-vax people, scientists started to figure out we need to, if not control our message, at least explain things to the public before somebody else does it in a bad way and takes advantage of that. So now most PhD programs will have a SciComm component, which was unheard of 30 years ago. And I think we might have a little bit of an issue with that because if we were a science, we have our journals like Skeptical Inquirer, Skeptic Magazine, all things like that. You do your research, you publish your research in the journal, and people like us see it. But I don't think the average person who is thinking about Bigfoot is picking up Skeptical Inquirer off the
Absolutely
newsstand.
not. They're a member of a Bigfoot hunting team and group, and they're in a bubble, and they only look at stuff that promotes Bigfoot as a real thing.
Exactly. So just
Yeah.
like there's SciComm, I think there needs to be a greater effort, even if not from the researchers, from somebody of SkepCom, getting that good information that all the researchers do out to the people who really need to see it.
Yeah, yeah. And this is, by the way, precisely the reason I have you on now. So AIPT Science was on my mind last week because I was writing an article for you. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to promote the website this week. As you said, I think it's very important to reach out to people outside the choir because they're not going to be picking up Skeptical Inquirer or any of those. They're probably not going to watch the videos on
Yeah,
CFI.
because they have
So it's great.
because even if you got people who believe in something or people who don't have an opinion either way. The believers are certainly never going to seek out skeptical media because they already have an image in their mind, whether you call it skepticism or whatever you want to call it. They already have an image in their mind of the debunker who just wants to poo-poo everything and doesn't
Right.
even look at the evidence. I think that's a largely undeserved characterization. I think a lot of skeptics actually do good investigation. They don't come in with a preconceived notion, but that's when I was a kid, I believed in UFOs and I had that beaten into me by the UFO
Oh my
media.
God, yeah.
They were like, oh, these terrible debunkers like Phil Class. And then I started to read Phil Class and I'm like, well, wait a minute, he's kind of making sense.
I'm old enough where there wasn't an internet, and I only found out about UFOs from a book. It might have been in the science section about somebody who claimed that they had met all these extraterrestrial species and had sketches of the beings and their spacecraft from each planet. I was just, eating it up. Why isn't this on the news? Look, it's in the library. This is true.
Yeah, no, I had a very similar. I believed all that stuff, and just to name drop the man again, picked up a copy of Cosmos when I was like 14 or so, and I was just trying to figure out because I'd been reading the UFO books, and I was like, once I heard like a good skeptical argument, believe it or not, from Jacques Vallée of all people, who was talking about underground alien bases. He said to the believers of the underground alien bases, well, who takes out the garbage? And they were like,
We're
and they
talking
were
about
like,
that there
and
as
they were
well.
like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you're talking about like giant multiple acre underground sites. That's going to produce a lot of waste. Where does it all go? Somebody would see it. And like,
Now, playing the skeptic, maybe they use that material in Mr.
sure.
Fusion and for their energy.
But
So,
at the same time, it made me think like, well, hold on, why did I
right,
never think
right,
of that question?
right.
And then when I started getting more into science, I would read Sagan and other things, and I'd be like, oh, these are the kinds of questions you need to ask. And oh, eyewitness testimony, maybe not the best after all.
So I've heard you say something like, let's not kill the fun when we're discussing sci-fi and picking it apart, sci-fi and other fiction, but like we can use lessons to do that to also show that science is fun.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why that's the thing. It's like, especially now when pretty much everything is entertainment, like there's so much competition for eyeballs, there's so much competition for people's attention. If you come down negatively or you're perceived as being negative, people just aren't going to want to listen to you because they have a million other things that will please them. So yeah, and that's the important thing, and that's why, just to kind of promote your article, you wrote something for me that's will probably be already live by the time you see this, um,
Wow.
about Havana syndrome, which you've talked a lot about, and dancing panics and things like that. And you related, I'll spoil it here, you related to that episode of, what was it, Subspace Rhapsody from
Yeah,
Strange New
the Star
Worlds,
Trek, Strange New Worlds, Subspace
which
Rhapsody.
I just thought was brilliant. And you weren't out there saying, well, this could never happen in real life. You were saying, hey, this is a fun episode. Let's think about how this could have really happened.
Right. I like the general take in all the articles I see there. So what are some of your favorite articles? Not including mine, of course. You don't have to give me. Yeah, I've had 7 previous. This will be number 8, I think.
Well, just to go back to comic books, there was a comic series that just recently ended called Department of Truth, written by a guy named James Tynion the Fourth. I think he's won writing awards. I believe the comic won the Eisner one year, which is basically the Oscars for comic books. And I've talked to him a lot, and he is very much on the wavelength of a lot of us. Like, he grew up believing this stuff and having a good time with it, and now he's very skeptical and especially realizes the dangers of conspiracy theories, so much so that this book was all about, if enough people believe a certain conspiracy theory, it becomes real, which is a little on the nose. but
Mhm.
and so basically every conspiracy theory that he's talked about in the book, I was able to get somebody to write about in a skeptical manner, like basically anything you can imagine, like even it's cryptids, but like obscure things like the phantom time hypothesis, serious stuff like Sandy Hook
How long ago
truthers.
was that?
The series ended sometime last year, but
So
if
I'm
you
sad.
go to,
I'm a little
eh,
sad because I just heard one today, which the series has ended, so they can't be. It's the whole Taylor Swift and the Chiefs and
that's a good one. Uh, Hey, I'm sure we'll talk about Skepticism Month in a second, but if anybody would like to write about Taylor Swift conspiracy theories, I would love to publish that article.
I was going to write you before. Has anyone written that? But I guess not.
No, but
So
hey,
here's
it's
your chance,
prime. Let's get
people.
it up before the Super Bowl, baby. Come on, let's do it.
So this is one of the other reasons I wanted to publicize this, because I know you're always looking for new writers, and it's a great way. Like, you don't have to be a professional writer to do this, right?
No, absolutely not. In fact, well, let me preface it by saying I took some journalism classes because I was kind of not satisfied with my real job and thought about transitioning to journalism. And like I said, you know, science journalism isn't always good, and I thought maybe I can help make it better. And then once I finished my classes, I was like, oh shit, nobody's getting jobs anymore. What am I? What? This ain't gonna work. So that's when I was like, you know what? Let me just concentrate on this pop culture stuff. It's what I'm good at. It's what I know. And I was like, let me see how many articles. Let me see if I can do like an article or two a week. And then I was like, well, that's a lot of writing. Let me see if I can reach out and get more people. And at this point, I've gotten like 80 or 90, I'd have to count up, since 2017. 80 or 90 different people have written for me. And a
Wow, that's
couple of
astounding. I
them,
would never have guessed it was that
and
high.
that goes from professionals like Ben Radford, maybe you've heard of him, to a friend of mine from college, to someone I knew in high school who I don't think I've seen since high school, and I'm an old man now. They're going to have some articles coming up, especially my high school friend is, she knows a hairdresser where she lives, who is helping with actual human trafficking victims, and she really wanted to write about that in contrast to what is that terrible movie, Sound of Freedom,
Oh, yes.
and QAnon's fantasy trafficking victims.
So have you had somebody have you published an article by somebody who had never written for anything before?
Yeah, like I said, there's two of them right there. Most people I have had, I discovered at some point that I'm much more enjoy editing and helping other people craft their voices than I do actually writing. Um, uh, I don't know. Maybe it's the critic in me. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people have never written before. I had somebody, a friend of JD Sword, who actually also writes for Skeptical Inquirer website. He came up to me after I talked to Kenny Biddle once, and he said, like, "Hey, this is pretty cool. Can I write something for you? I'm kind of thinking about doing it, and how would I do it?" And I was like, "I'll tell you."
That's great.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Let me read for you, because the New York City Skeptics is going to be hosting Daniel Loxton to talk about where do we go from here. And that was actually the name of a 2007 essay that he wrote quite a long time ago. So we're going to get an update on that. But I actually read it today, and I took one paragraph out of this, pertinent to new people. He said, "We need everybody, young people, fledgling activists, the silent outrage, those who don't know where to start, to stand up and be counted. There is burden enough to go around," meaning to look into these paranormal and supernatural claims, conspiratorial claims. "Even our heroes need students, helpers, even one day heirs." I love that.
Yeah, it's very true. And a little off topic, but I actually talked to Daniel a little bit as a preface of the talk we're going to do in a few days, which by the time you see this, you will probably be able to go to New York City Skeptics on the YouTube page and view it, I would hope. And we talked a little bit about kind of like people who don't self-identify as skeptics. There's a lot of them out there, and they use kind of terms like they do misinformation or disinformation research. And if you actually go and check out YouTube and Google things like skepticism versus misinformation or disinformation, skepticism comes up with a lot of atheist topics these days. And misinformation comes up with what I think we would call classical skeptical topics.
Okay. So regarding your editing philosophy, and this is like, again, for new people to understand this, I've been writing for a long time. I have no writing training at all. But it's interesting in that I submit my articles, at least 4 other publications over the years. No one has changed a word. When I submit them to you, the
I
average,
tear that shit apart.
you do 100 words, paragraphs get wiped out. It's a start. So what's your editing philosophy? And I think I'm saying this partly because if somebody doesn't feel they're a great writer, you will patch it up.
Yeah, because, well, here's what journalism really taught me. There's a reason journalism has existed more or less in its current form for 100 years, 150, 200 years, whatever it's been, because it works. And it works because you start with a narrative, and you want a narrative flow to go throughout the whole thing. The next thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing. And if you can make a human connection, that's what's going to get people continue reading, which is even more important now, when I believe the page retention rate on any website is the average is about 1 second. People will click, say if that's what they want to look at or not, click away, and that's it. You want to keep people on that page for as long. You want to not give them an excuse to click away. You got to hook them immediately and get them to read the whole thing if you really want to get that information across. And a lot of that is, again, building a narrative, and also silly things like search engine optimization. Anything over 1,000 words gets pushed down on Google results. You got to repeat certain words, whatever word you really want to resonate, and things like that. And a lot of what I do is when you say, like, your articles end up with 100 or 200 less words, part of that is to get closer to that 1,000. Part of it is just cutting out like filler words that, if you see a lot of buts or whatevers or things that don't really need to be there, that is something that I cut out 100 times in everybody's articles. Those are the kinds of things that kind of slow down the flow. And, just the average person reading it, if the text gets clunky, they'll be like, I'm done reading this, I'm going to go do something else. So anything you can do just to smooth it out, tighten it up, it really helps.
So the bottom line for any newbies out there who want to use this as an opportunity to get published for the first time, you just listen to all that. Like, you have nothing to worry about. Russ will make it perfect.
Speaking of Radford, I'm going to publish a great article by him on the Chupacabra recently. He just sent it to me. It's going to get published very soon. He sent me a 3,000-word article. I cut it in half. I'm like, dude, I can't do this. I'm like, dude, I can't do this. They're not going to let me do this.
So how important are pictures? Because I noticed that you always have interesting pictures you add to my articles.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to have something. And another one of one of those SEO tricks is that if you want somebody to one of the things about SEO on a site like this is you want to pick the search term that you want people to be searching when they find your article. And I'll tell you right now, I told you I hated, well, I didn't tell you, I'll tell you right now. I hated your original headline for your Star Trek and Havana Syndrome article.
Let's see. It's horses, not unicorns.
Yes. What the hell does that mean, Rob? I mean, I know what it means, but somebody looking at that, what are they going to see? So I wanted to get a mass psychogenic illness in there. But at the same time, I was like, okay, if somebody's searching mass psychogenic illness, this is a very broad overview. They should probably go somewhere else that's going to have more details. What I want is for someone who's searching for Star Trek Strange New Worlds to find this article and be
That's
like, mass
brilliant.
psychogenic illness. What the hell is
Right.
that? Click on it, boom, you're suckered in.
Right. So the title you will have to search for or go right to AIPT is, I think you said, were the crew of Strange New Worlds affected by mass psychogenic illness? Simply
Something
put.
like that. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's going to
sure.
publish, if not Thursday the 1st, Friday the 2nd, I think.
Of February 2024, we're talking about for people who
Correct.
look at this in the future. It'll be out there. So, okay. So now, just like they do in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is covered by AIPT, by the way, let's learn a bit about your own origin story. So, what's your background? Did you have a religious background? Were you a paranormal believer? In a large part, you mentioned a few things, UFOs.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was, I grew up without any religion. But yeah, like I must have thought Ghostbusters was a documentary because I
So
love
that was
that.
your thing. Was that your thing?
I love
Ghosts?
that
Was
movie, and
Ghosts?
Ghosts was the first thing I was really interested in and big believer, you know. And but then like I kind of moved into UFOs because that seemed somehow more serious to me. I don't know. But yeah, I loved all that stuff, and I still do, like cryptids, and you know that's why those are the kinds of things that get published a lot on AIPT because those are the things that I'm interested in. But like I said, yeah, at some point it was a revelation to me, no pun intended, because I think it was in the book Revelations by John Fillet where he said that thing, and I was like, yeah, this isn't like there's something I'm not understanding here. And that's when I got more into science. And it was a long, protracted process of going from belief to the null hypothesis of maybe this isn't true and let's wait for the
So
evidence.
this would, instead of just being a one of in the Marvel universe, this would be a multi-movie sequence to get you to become a skeptic.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a boring ass movie because I was kind of a loser then. But
So what so what did you major in when you actually decided to do real science?
yeah, well, that was the thing. It was like I wanted to do science, and once I got the science bug, I got interested in a lot of different things. I ended up doing geophysics, which is basically science of the earth, like seismology. I
So
did a
I
lot
don't
of
think I've ever heard that
seismology.
term. I've
Yeah,
heard geology and physics, of course, different
yeah,
about this.
it's like internal earth stuff. Like I said, I did a lot of seismology, but it also encompasses volcanology and stuff like that, inner earth movements and things of that nature. But yeah, and I honestly, I probably shouldn't have. Well, I tell you a story. When I went to my geology department, my future geology department, when I was just you know, signing up to go to Geneseo, my I guess advisor or my future advisor looked at my SAT scores and then looked back at me and said, "You still want to do science?" Uh, my SAT scores were good. Both my verbal and my math were good, but my math was like good up here, and my verbal was like good up here.
That's
Well, I
weird.
mean, in the long run, he turned out to be great. He turned out to be right because I ended up washing out of science. I went to grad school and didn't finish my master's
Huh.
for a variety of reasons. One of them being I don't think my mathematical aptitude was really high enough, and that I was lazy and drinking too much. But uh, but honestly, I think it all worked out because that background in what science is and how to do it, and even just the knowledge of where physics is at this point in time, our general understanding of it, that now I can use my words, which I'm much better with, to bring that understanding to other people. So no regrets.
The other thing you're involved with, I mentioned it in the introduction, is the New York City Skeptics. How'd you get involved with that? And you rose to the rank of president. So
Yeah,
tell
well,
me about that.
actually, if you go to AIPTcomics.com and search for James Randi, you'll see an article that I wrote when he died, I believe it was. And this is, again, where people need to understand how important connecting is and how important the narrative is. Why do you like James Randi? I'll tell you why you like James Randi, because he told great stories. And I didn't even know, I moved to the New York City area in like 2006. And I didn't even know there was a local group for a long time. And then in 2012, I heard about Nexus, which was, our big
Northeast Conference on Science and
science and skepticism, kind of like our SciCon analog out here on the East Coast. And I saw Randy and I was like, oh, I read one of his books. And I was like, ah, shit, I should go to that. Like, dude was old. He's not going to be, of course, he ended up living much longer than that, even. And this is 2012. But hell, I was like, yeah, I need to go see Randy while I have the chance. And I think I'm pretty sure it's on the Nexus YouTube. If you go to it, he gave this great talk, largely about Peter Popoff. And of course, the terrible story. He was the faith healer who had the earpiece, and his wife would tell him all the ailments of the people. And also,
hello, PD. Hello, PD. If you're not hearing me, you're going to be in trouble tonight.
Exactly. And also, like, randomly racist things for no apparent reason about people in the audience. And Randy, again, the master storyteller, the master performer that he stood up there and he would talk in this very low tone, this very soft voice about these things. And like when he said the most horrible thing, he would save the most horrible thing that was said on the earpiece to last. And then he would pause and say, and then he yelled, "What kinds of people are these?" And he just went on. He talked about like the desperation of the people in the audience and how they would come. And these people, Popoff and his minions, they didn't care. They just wanted to fleece them and take their money. And that's when I stood there and I was like, you know what? What am I doing with my life? I got a decent job. I got everything taken care of for the most part. I need to do something. I need to try to get involved and make something happen, because I don't know if I could live with myself if I didn't.
Wow. I had not heard that story. Very interesting. So yeah, so the point was like, how did you become president of that organization?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like I started hanging around until they had to do something with me. I just started doing little things like, hey, I'll take care of the emails or whatever, and then like I would when we had talks, I would like write a little report of the talk and like say, hey, do you want to post this on your website? Take it, it's free. And eventually they figured out like, oh yeah, this guy actually gives a shit. And I just kind of wormed my way in, and then eventually everyone was like, well, I don't want to be president. Well, I don't want to be president. And I'm like, I'll do it.
Yeah, you were president, I believe, when I gave a talk there, my first skeptical talk ever, and it was a thing that you guys invented. I don't know if I've seen it replicated anywhere, called Speedy Camp.
Yeah, I think it was the only time we've ever done that, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is. I like the idea. That was a shorter version of the Skeptic Camp, so you had to give the talk. I think it was 10 minutes, which was tough. And Mitch Lampert, ran the thing, and it was very good. I remember you gave a talk, maybe astrology, something like that.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah, that was my first talk ever. My first time getting up on a stage talking to a skeptical group. It was my little foot in the door there, and actually that led me to talking at SciCon that year, which is like really weird.
You're welcome.
Yes, oh my God. And what's your involvement with Nexus?
Well, Nexus is kind of on pause right now. There wasn't one this past year in 2023. Losing track of the years. Sort of when the pandemic, the SGU guys it was a collaboration between SGU and NES, the general group that hosts SGU, Skeptics Guide to the Universe. And they kind of took it more internally because they wanted to do an online thing, obviously during the pandemic and shortly after the pandemic. So they were clearly more versed with that. And then they did the in-person thing in the New York City area. That was this past year. That was less of a conference and more of just a hangout, which I think a lot of people enjoyed. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Okay,
I
it's
think I think the
TBD.
future is undetermined
TBD.
in that area.
Yeah, that was called not a con, as I recall. That was
I
an
believe that's correct. Yes.
interesting name. And I might have gone to it, except it was too close to the conference I had just come back from, which was SecCon in Las Vegas. And so you've mentioned people who've written for Skeptical Inquirer. Have you written for Skeptical Inquirer, right? So, several articles, as I recall.
Correct, but then again, we get back to the laziness. So I haven't done much recently. I do need to get back to it because I do have a couple things on my mind that are more suited to that location. I actually just went to the Sasquatch Calling Festival in Whitehall, New York, which is about half an hour south of where I grew up. Believe it or
But
not.
what does that mean, calling festival?
That's a good question. um,
Oh, like bird calls, so that like they
yeah,
try to make
yeah.
the sound
So
they think it's
there
going to
was a
attract. Oh my
there was
God.
a Bigfoot encounter there in the late 70s. And part of the story was that the gentleman who was a police officer who encountered the thing had a great description of this beastly growl and howl that the thing had.
Hmm.
So they bring people in and try to mimic it, and like they give a prize for the best Sasquatch call. And it's very kitschy. I mean, it's very, but
Okay.
it's one of those things where it's like I think, and this is a different topic, but I think cryptozoology is waning, and I think that kind of stuff is going more into folklore, and
Hmm.
fewer people are even considering that those things might be real, and it's just a fun story, and it's just a fun local tradition. Like they've had that festival 3 or 4 years now, and it's bigger every year. And let me tell you, Whitehall, New York, in the middle of the state, upstate, not a very prosperous place, and that's not coming down on them. It's just the way it is. So if they can get a little bit of cash infusion and have fun with Bigfoot, I don't think that's the worst
So
thing.
are you saying this is kind of like Puxatawny Phil, which I don't think anybody believes he actually predicts the weather, but it's like a big thing for that
There were
local?
definitely some believers there, but I would, if I had to guess at the percentage, hardcore believers, I mean, like a quarter of the people there, you know.
So I know that Kenny Biddle, the chief investigator for CSI, goes to paranormal conferences and things because that's where he got to start on the other side of it, believing those things. And he does great talking to the other side. Have you ever done that to
Very
contact?
little. Especially there, I kind of put myself in that reporter role, given my journalism background. I just kind of wanted to take it all in, and I did ask some questions too. They had talks, believe it or not. They had a little stage where they had a few people, like different Bigfoot quote unquote experts, so I did ask them some questions to just kind of pick their brains about things. But yeah, I mean, like I said, especially that one in particular, I was just there to observe. um yeah, I don't know if I'm the most confrontational person. Maybe that's why I write instead of doing videos. It's tremendous that Kenny does that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the Lord's work in a way, because like I'm sure it's very thankless, and I mean, I know for a fact he takes a lot of crap. But in my head, in my thoughts, I'm like, well, let's be practical. How can I do the most? I'm only here for a short time, right? Like, how can I do the most good? And am I going to convert this guy who's believed in ghosts and made it his identity and his weekend activity every weekend? Or can I kind of hit people who don't have a solid opinion yet?
Right.
But like I
Right.
said, it's awesome that Kenny does it, and I love him for doing it. But I'm not going to do it. I don't have it in me.
It's not my thing either. So what are your thoughts on other ways to reach beyond the choir? I have to bring up Guerrilla Skeptics here. You
Yeah,
know,
well, that's the obvious and the best one. I mean, and I've told you and Susan this many times. I mean, my whole thing, and speaking as Daniel recently, and the more I think about it, I'm trying to refine the not even the elevator pitch, the one sentence pitch. And the one sentence pitch that I'm coming up with today before we had this talk was go where the people are. You can't just assume that the average person, again, with all the entertainment options and everything vying for our attention, is going to seek out the best information. They're going to go to whatever's accessible. They're going to go to the YouTube videos that they're watching. They're going to go to their friends. So put your information where the people are. Wikipedia that's usually the number one place that people go. So yes, that's where the information needs to be, and it needs to be in other venues where people already have their eyeballs.
Okay, Russ, I think that's a good place to end our talk. What's the best place for people to contact you to find out about submitting something to AIPT, perhaps?
You can I guess the best way, there actually is a contact form on AIPTcomics.com. Where if you just address it to me, it'll get to me eventually. Or you can tag me on Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter because why not? You could tag at AIPT Science on Twitter or DM. I believe the DMs are open. I'm not positive. You may need to follow and then DM. But like I said, if you don't want to do that, you can go through the contact form on AIPTcomics.com and just come by and check things out, because every day in February, we are posting a new article, one of them by Rob Palmer, that is about skepticism in pop culture or skepticism of pop culture, which I think is just as important.
Yes, it's a fantastic idea, and I'm glad to see you keep that going every year. All right, thanks again, Russ. It was a blast.
So thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.